Well, old Stephen K. Bannon has been arrested by none other than the United States Postal Service. Now, I can't even begin to imagine the amount of irony that the resistance crowd is going to perceive, when it comes to this story. And even I have to admit, it's quite funny, considering that there's been all this hysteria lately about old Donald Trump going after the Postal Service and doing something to destroy them or whatever. And now pro-Trump supervillain Steve Bannon gets arrested by a bunch of mailmen. I mean, it's just, it's poetic justice. It would make for a great cartoon, but unfortunately, we live in reality, not in a cartoon. And I would imagine that the reason why Bannon would be arrested by people from the U.S. Post Office or the Postal Service. I'm still not used to that. I mean, didn't they change the name to the Postal Service like 50 years ago? But I mean, everyone still calls it the U.S. Post Office. But anyway, I'd imagine his crime has something to do with mail fraud, although that's not what that's not any of the charges that I heard. Like, I heard money laundering and things like that, and I guess defrauding people through this Kickstarter or GoFundMe. I can't remember which it was, but it was this whole Build the Wall thing. And I didn't know that Bannon was involved with the Build the Wall Kickstarter fiasco. But immediately after seeing it, I thought, boy, this really reeks of some shady business. Because I knew that, there's a reason why there isn't a wall yet. Because that's a really difficult thing to do, because you would have to coordinate with all of these private property owners who own land all along the border. And it's a very messy situation to deal with, even if you have the power of eminent domain and you're the government. But for private individuals to get together and say, hey, let's just raise a bunch of money to build the wall, I mean, it's not that simple. So I knew that this whole Kickstarter thing was pretty misleading. Now, apparently, what they were supposed to do was build some section of wall along some private property. And to do this, they raised $25 million. That's how many people. That's how much money was donated, probably by some pretty ordinary people who don't have a lot of money and were kind of gullible. Now, apparently, the four guys, including Bannon, who put this whole operation together, said they were not going to use this money to line their own pockets. It was just supposed to go towards building the wall. That's why the title of the whole operation was We Built the Wall. So, the idea being, if you donate money to this, you are helping to build the wall. You're not helping to line Stephen K. Bannon's pockets. Although that is what he's accused of, that essentially they use shell companies, they move some money around, and they got the money for themselves, which is a really gross thing to do. Now, obviously, I don't know for a fact if everything they're saying about Bannon is true. Sure, it's possible that this could be some kind of, political hit job, but before I knew that Bannon was involved with this, I thought that this whole operation was pretty much a scam. And so I was expecting that this is how things would turn out for whoever it was behind this whole campaign. It's kind of like the opposite of trying to, scam someone into selling them a bridge. That old joke coming from, the fact that private individuals don't really own bridges in America for the most part. Most of your big bridges that span, bays or rivers are owned by the government. They're part of public infrastructure, and so you have to be pretty gullible to buy a bridge from somebody. But this here is kind of the mirror image of that. They're trying to, instead of sell someone a bridge, they're trying to get people to build a wall, another form of what would be public infrastructure. And I'm not a fan of government-funded infrastructure because I think the government tends to neglect it. I think it'd be much better if we had lots of private infrastructure. But given the system that we live in, we don't live in Ancapistan or something where everything is privately owned. We do live in a country where certain things in the country are just the purview of government. And, the southern border happens to be one of those things. And so while I do think that you have to be pretty gullible to have given money to this whole, to Bannon and his goons here, I do still feel bad for the people who who were defrauded allegedly by Bannon and these other three guys. Because people who are that gullible, who would fall for such a thing, tend to be folks without much money. The old saying is, a fool and his money are soon parted. So somebody who is going to give in so easily to such an idea, who is going to be sold so easily, well, then, they're not very likely to hang on to a whole lot of money. It's very likely that, a lot of their money gets scammed away from them on dumb things. And while ultimately that's their personal responsibility, if they do, spend their money on things that I personally, or that many other people would consider to be a waste of money, that's their mistake that they have to suffer the consequences for. But I personally don't want to be profiting off of other people's mistakes. That wouldn't make me feel very good. I don't think that, for example, false advertising is something that should be illegal. I don't think that, deceiving your customers should be illegal. I think that your reputation is enough reason to not try and deceive your customers, because if you deceive people and sell them, the cure for cancer, and it turns out it doesn't work, well, then you're going to get a pretty bad reputation pretty quickly. And so even if I could tell people I've got the cure for cancer, here it is, $20 a bottle, and lots of people bought it because they were just that gullible, and they think that I, for some reason, was able to cure cancer, I would still feel bad, even if I was making good money off of that. So if these guys who ran this Kickstarter really did do what they're accused of, I hope that they face the consequences. I mean, personally, I never really liked Steve Bannon. I used to listen to him on the radio in the morning. I remember vividly his tenure as Breitbart News Executive Chairman. He was very proud of that title, I remember. He always seemed like a blowhard jerk, but there was something endearing about it. I mean, I listened to his show for at least a few months after it got started. But as the patron saint of the comments section, I always, got the feeling certainly that Bannon was chasing, where he thought the money was going. I never really could get a feel for what he did and did not believe, how much of him, was an act of grift and how much of it was genuine. But I doubt that this is the last we'll be hearing from old Steve Bannon. I'm sure he still has a few tricks up his sleeve. So, with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So, I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.